I should have known the moment my mother's name flashed across my phone that the world I had built for myself was about to tilt. There is a particular way my family delivers disaster, a softening of the voice meant to cushion the blow, as if gentleness could disguise the sharpness underneath. Still, when I answered, I did not expect the sentence that would pull the floor out from beneath me. I did not expect the moment that would change everything. My name is Mariel, and this is where the unraveling began. My mother started with small talk, the sort of pointless chatter she uses when she is circling something she knows will upset me. I listened politely while stirring a pot of soup on my tiny stove, half engaged, half drifting. She asked about work. She asked if I had been sleeping. She asked if I had heard from my brother lately. None of it meant anything. It was the kind of conversation that pretended to be ordinary, only so it could hide whatever was coming. Then she breathed in, and the air between us shifted. "Sweetheart, I need you to stay calm for this." Every time she said those words, something in my life cracked. I braced myself, without even realizing I was doing it. She paused, either savoring the moment or searching for the courage. And then she spoke the sentence that rearranged everything I thought I knew. "Your inheritance is gone." At first, I thought she meant something bureaucratic. Maybe a bank error, maybe a paperwork mistake, maybe something that could be fixed with a signature or a form. But she continued talking in a rush, the way she does when she wants to outrun accountability, and it became clear she had crossed a line she did not intend to walk back over. "Your brother needed bail money. It was urgent. You know how he is, and you are single, honey. You do not have anyone depending on you. You will make more someday." I went still. The spoon slipped from my hand and struck the stove with a dull sound. My grandmother's inheritance had been the one thing in my life that belonged to me alone. She had left it because she knew exactly how my family operated, how easily they overlooked me, how likely they were to take advantage. She wrote a letter the day she set up that account, telling me she wanted me to have something the world could not touch. Except the world had not touched it. My own mother had. I kept my voice light because I knew she needed it to be light. If I reacted, she would turn herself into the victim. She would claim she was overwhelmed, that she had panicked, that she thought I would understand, so I did the one thing she did not expect. I stayed calm. "If that is what you had to do," I said. Each word placed carefully, each breath held steady. Relief flooded her tone. I could hear it like a warm wave. She thought the conversation was resolved, that the wound she had carved into me would scab over instantly because I refused to raise my voice. She believed the matter was small, forgivable, a hiccup in the rhythm, a family sacrifice. She did not understand that she had just severed the last fragile thread of trust I had been clinging to. She moved on quickly, telling me she hoped I would not hold a grudge, that I had always been so mature, so patient, so reliable. She said she knew I would bounce back. My brother, she added, was very grateful, even though he was not brave enough to call me himself. She promised to pay me back someday, though we both knew she never would. She ended the call with, "I love you, sweetheart. Thank you for being so understanding." When the line clicked dead, I stood in my quiet kitchen, staring at nothing, feeling the heat from the stove on my face. A part of me felt hollowed out. Another part felt strangely clear, as if someone had finally wiped the fog off a mirror I had been straining to see through for years. The soup simmered. My phone lay silent. And in that silence, something inside me shifted, something final and irreversible. That was the moment the idea of disappearing took its first breath. I did not leave with a dramatic flourish or a slammed door. I left the way a shadow slips out of a room, unnoticed until someone turns on the light and wonders where it went. The morning after my mother confessed to draining my inheritance, I woke with a stillness inside me that felt like a decision already made. My name is Mariel, and the day I disappeared began with the simplest act imaginable. I packed a single suitcase. I chose only what mattered, clothes that traveled well, the journal my grandmother gave me when I turned 16, a few photographs I had never shown anyone. I left behind everything that tied me to the version of myself my family recognized. That version had been predictable, forgiving, quiet. The woman who zipped that suitcase was none of those things anymore. I did not leave a note. I did not give a warning. I simply walked out of my apartment, locked the door, and stepped into the sort of freedom that feels both terrifying and inevitable. My first stop was a coastal town in the South, a place where no one knew me and no one asked questions. I rented a tiny room above a bakery, the kind of place that smelled of warm sugar and early mornings. I spent my days reading, walking, and sitting in unfamiliar cafes, while searching for skills I could learn that had nothing to do with my old life. I signed up for an online course in digital commerce, then another in remote project coordination. I discovered that distance sharpens the mind in ways comfort never could. My mother sent the first message 3 days after I left. It was gentle at first, full of concern wrapped in denial. "Sweetheart, hope you are all right. Call me." I did not respond. A week later, my brother texted, asking if I could send him some money as if nothing had happened and as if I were still the same person who always said yes. I blocked his number without hesitation. Silence began to settle around me like a second skin, protective and clarifying. As the weeks turned into months, something unexpected happened. The anger that had pushed me out the door softened into a clearer shape. It became understanding, not of them, but of myself. For so long, I had believed my worth depended on being useful, being agreeable, being the daughter who caused no trouble. When I removed myself from their reach, I discovered that I had been building my life around expectations that were never mine to carry. I moved from the coast to a mountain town where the air felt thin and the sky seemed close enough to touch. There, I learned the discipline of early mornings and late nights, spent refining the knowledge I had gathered. I joined virtual communities of people who had also walked away from the lives that crushed them. They taught me about independent contracting, remote operations, and how to build something from nothing with nothing but a laptop and persistence. By month 6, guilt no longer tugged at me when I saw my mother's name appear in my inbox. Her messages had shifted into a blend of worry and accusation. She said she deserved an explanation. She said families should work through problems together. She said it was unfair of me to freeze them out. I read each word without allowing them to touch me. They had made their choices. I was finally making mine. Each new skill I mastered became another brick in a foundation I had never been allowed to build before. I felt myself changing. My confidence no longer wavered. My ambition no longer needed permission. Something sharper grew within me, something that had been waiting a long time to be acknowledged. By the end of the year, I knew one thing with unshakable certainty. I was not going back as the woman I had been when I left. I did not notice the exact moment the shift happened. It was not marked by a celebration or a breakthrough or some dramatic revelation. It began quietly, the way most permanent changes do, with small decisions that built on each other until the person I once was no longer fit inside the life I was creating. My name is Mariel, and by the time the leaves started to turn in the mountain town where I had settled temporarily, I had already shed the skin my family spent 3 decades shaping. I walked through my days with a focus that startled even me. The first opportunity arrived in my inbox on a rainy morning. It was from a woman named Lila who had taken the same remote operations course I completed 2 months earlier. She said she admired my final project, that she had mentioned me to a colleague looking for help managing a distribution schedule for a small artisan collective overseas. It was short-term work, low stakes, barely enough to cover a week of food and living expenses. But it was mine. I accepted instantly and spent 3 days immersed in spreadsheets, communication threads, and logistics puzzles that lit up parts of my mind I had not used since college. When the project ended, the client thanked me for my precision. The word stayed with me. Precision. It felt like the opposite of the chaos my family lived in. More offers followed, each one slightly more substantial. A boutique clothing brand that needed help coordinating its seasonal shipments, a consultant who wanted assistance preparing materials for a major pitch, a small nonprofit that needed someone to streamline its volunteer management system. I became the person who solved problems, who delivered results without drama, who became essential quietly and efficiently. Income came in waves at first, unpredictable but steady enough to give me confidence. I learned to operate without fear, without the constant worry that I would somehow fall short. With each new success, my posture changed. My voice softened but strengthened at the same time, more certain, more deliberate. I no longer apologized when I was right, no longer explained myself unnecessarily, no longer sought approval from people who never learned how to give it. I invested in better tools. I joined more advanced courses. I let myself imagine a life where I could build something lasting from skills no one in my family ever cared to understand. Meanwhile, the messages from home piled up. My mother alternated between confusion and irritation, unable to accept that I was not rushing to restore the harmony she believed existed. My brother sent short, clipped questions about my return, phrased as if he were doing me a favor by bothering to ask. Each time my phone lit up, I felt the tension between us stretch tighter, a cord drawn across continents and silence. I ignored every call, and in doing so, reclaimed pieces of myself I had handed away for free. I knew they could sense the change, even without seeing it. Families have instincts about the children they underestimate. They must have felt the shift in the tone of my silence, the steadiness of it, the way it lacked apology. They must have felt that I was becoming someone they did not know how to categorize, someone they could no longer predict or manage. I kept my progress hidden from them because secrecy has its own power. There is something intoxicating about building in the dark, about watching your old life shrink in the distance, while your new one grows taller than anyone expects. I nurtured that secrecy like a flame, protecting it from the wind of their expectations. By the time winter arrived and the mountain air turned crisp enough to sting my skin, I had grown into a version of myself that felt inevitable. Opportunities kept finding me, pulled toward the version of Marielle who no longer needed permission to take up space. And as I moved through each day with more certainty, I realized something unmistakable. I had risen far beyond the place where they last saw me, and they had no idea what was coming next. A full year passed before I allowed myself to surface again, and when I did, it was not in the place they expected. I did not walk back into my childhood home or send a message announcing my return. I stepped into the world in a way they could not dismiss or control. My name is Marielle, and the moment I chose to reappear was calculated, deliberate, and entirely mine. The rise I had built in silence finally crossed into the public eye when a global logistics firm featured me in an article about remote innovators shaping the future of international operations. They wrote about my work with artisan collectives, my consulting contracts, my efficient systems. They called me a force of quiet strategy, someone who understood both people and process. It was the kind of attention that left no room for the old narrative that had kept me small. People I had worked with shared the article. New clients reached out with interest. My online profile gained traction, and with each small ripple, my family's certainty that I would eventually crawl back to them began to erode. I did not announce anything to them directly. I simply existed loudly enough that they could not pretend not to see me. My mother called the same evening my name started circulating in her social circles. Her voice trembled with a strange mix of pride and panic. She congratulated me in the same breath she asked why I had not told her what I had been doing. She apologized without taking responsibility, explaining that families sometimes make difficult decisions and that she had hoped I would understand. I listened and offered nothing. Silence is its own pressure, and she felt every ounce of it. My brother took a different approach. He opened with charm, praising my success with exaggerated enthusiasm, as if flattery could erase the reason I left. When that failed, he shifted to guilt, telling me how worried they had been, how stressful my absence had been on the family, how unfair it was that I vanished without an explanation. When guilt did not work, irritation crept into his voice. He asked if I thought I was better than them now. He asked if I planned on coming home or if I was too important for that. He tried every tactic he had ever used to keep me predictable. None of it worked. Every conversation became another turn of a screw inside them, tightening the tension, drawing out their discomfort. I offered no explanations for where I had been or how I had changed. I let them speculate. I let them stew in the uncertainty. Suspense has power when held with intention, and I held it with both hands. They wanted a reunion. They wanted the version of me who bent without breaking, who forgave without thinking, who absorbed their chaos without complaint. They wanted the daughter who would soothe their guilt instead of naming it. But the woman they reached for no longer existed, and the one who stood in her place wanted something clearer than reconciliation. I wanted accountability. The more I withheld, the more they scrambled. My mother sent long messages filled with explanations I never asked for. My brother tried to insist that family should come before everything, especially money. They spoke as though I had betrayed them, as though my absence had been an injury rather than a response. I let the weight of not knowing what I would do next settle over them like a storm cloud they could not outrun. For the first time in my life, they had to sit with the consequences of underestimating me, and I had no intention of easing that discomfort. They managed to pin me down on a late afternoon when I was already tired from a day of meetings. My mother insisted we all speak at once, claiming it was important and long overdue. My brother hovered behind her like a shadow made of old habits, ready to pounce the moment he sensed weakness. They thought coordinating this conversation meant they had regained some measure of control, as if summoning me would return me to the person I used to be. My name is Marielle, and the woman who answered their call was not someone they could guide or guilt into submission. My mother opened with a shaky attempt at warmth. She said she missed me, that she wanted us to heal, that she never meant to hurt me. She spoke as though intention mattered more than impact, as though her reasons could erase the reality of what she had taken. My brother crossed his arms and sighed loudly, already impatient. He asked if I planned on dragging this out forever. He said I should forgive and move forward because holding on to anger was unhealthy. I listened to both of them without interrupting, letting their words layer over each other like competing justifications. When they paused, waiting for me to soften, I finally spoke. I told them I was not angry anymore, not in the way they imagined. Anger had burned itself out months ago, replaced by understanding. I told them I had learned exactly who I was when I was no longer orbiting their expectations, that stepping away had shown me a life I could have built long before if I had not been weighed down by guilt and obligation. I explained that their betrayal had not simply drained an account. It had severed something more fundamental. It taught me that trust built on convenience collapses the moment it is tested. My mother's eyes filled with tears as she tried to interrupt, saying it had been a family emergency, that she thought I would understand because I had always been generous. My brother muttered that I was being dramatic, that plenty of families help each other out, that I should be grateful he was safe. They were still performing, still contorting the story to place themselves at the center. So I made it simple. I told them what I had done in the year they lost track of me. I described the work I built from nothing, the income I earned on my own terms, the contracts I managed, the recognition I received without leaning on anyone. I told them that my life now was held together by skill, focus, and discipline, none of which had come from them. I told them the account my grandmother left me had been more than money. It had been a promise, and they had broken it. Then I told them the part they never expected to hear. I had reached the end of every obligation I once believed I owed them. I had closed the financial channels they used to lean on. I had removed myself from their logistical assumptions. I had cut every tie that allowed them to treat my stability as their safety net. They watched me list each closed door, each severed link, each final boundary. My mother cried openly. My brother exploded, calling me ungrateful, selfish, cold. He said family does not abandon family, but I knew the truth they could not bear to face. They abandoned me first. When the call ended, the silence was absolute. It felt like a wire pulled too tight and then snapped clean in two, leaving nothing to bind us anymore. And in that quiet, a certainty settled over me. Betrayal has its patterns. Some families break you with noise, others with expectation, others with the knife they claim is love. But reinvention belongs to anyone willing to step through the cracks those betrayals create. Anyone can walk away from the life that diminished them. Anyone can build something stronger on the other side. I did, and I am never going back.